The massive alien vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, its sleek chromium hull reflecting sunlight in brilliant flashes across the New Delhi skyline. People gathered in streets worldwide, eyes fixed on screens or the sky itself, watching. Humanity's first official extraterrestrial contact. Inside the United Nations Grand Assembly, Secretary-General Kwan stood with remarkable composure as the holographic form of High Ambassador Taiho materialized. The alien's four eyes blinked independently, scanning the room filled with world leaders who had rushed to this unprecedented gathering. "People of Earth," Taiho began, his translator converting complex harmonic speech into crisp English. "The Galactic Concord welcomes potential new members who demonstrate sufficient value to our collective." Taiho's secondary arms unfolded as he gestured to a spinning holographic display of thousands of worlds. 47 species form our alliance, protecting civilized space from threats beyond imagination. Each member contributes defensive vessels, proportionate to their technological advancement and population. President Yuna leaned forward. "And what would Earth's contribution need to be?" The alien's mouth parts twisted in what humans would later recognize as amusement. "For a world of your development and numbers, approximately 500 warships would be considered minimal." The assembly erupted in chaos. Admiral Lee stood, his weathered face tight with controlled frustration. "Ambassador, our entire combined naval fleet contains fewer vessels than that. Building such a force would take decades." "Then you are not ready," Taiho stated flatly. "Primitive species often require centuries more development before joining. We will return in 50 years to reassess." The silence that followed felt heavier than gravity. Then a voice cut through the tension. "What if we sent one ship? One vessel representing the best Earth has to offer?" All eyes turned to Dr. Jin, the renowned physicist whose breakthrough propulsion theories had revolutionized space travel. The alien's skin shifted color slightly. Surprise, perhaps. "One ship?" Taiho's translator couldn't quite capture the mixture of disbelief and condescension. "The Nith contribute 8,000 vessels. Even the Voro, with their limited territories, maintain a fleet of 200. "But you didn't specify a minimum," Dr. Jin pointed out. "You said proportionate to development. One exceptional ship would accurately represent our current capabilities." For 3 tense days, Earth's leaders debated while the Concord delegation observed. Finally, a consensus emerged. Humanity would pool its resources to build a single vessel, incorporating every technological breakthrough previously held secret by competing nations. 6 months later, Taiho returned to witness the commencement of construction on the UES Defiant. The vessel would incorporate experimental adaptive shielding, quantum communication arrays, and revolutionary defensive systems. Most controversial was the inclusion of the Jin catalyst, an experimental drive system that theoretically allowed for tactical jumps through compressed space. "Your species amuses me," Taiho told Dr. Jin as they observed the orbital construction platform. "You cannot possibly believe one vessel will earn you membership." "Perhaps not," Jin replied. "But we'll learn more from building this ship than from a century of separate development. Sometimes limitations drive innovation." When news reached other Concord species about Earth's single-ship contribution, recordings of various aliens equivalent of laughter circulated through galactic networks. The humans were branded the one-ship wonders, a term meant to mock their presumption. 2 years later, the UES Defiant prepared for its maiden voyage. Captain Han stood on the observation deck, watching Earth grow smaller. At 45, she had commanded vessels in 3 of Earth's oceans and spent 5 years on the International Mars Station. Now she commanded humanity's greatest achievement and most desperate hope. "Captain, the Concord escort has arrived," announced Navigation Officer Park. "They're requesting permission to approach and inspect us." Han's eyes narrowed. "Grant permission, but maintain security protocols. They're here to satisfy their curiosity, not to help." The Concord vessel, nearly 3 times the Defiant's size, positioned itself alongside. Soon after, a delegation transported aboard, led by a tall, spindly being with iridescent scales. "I am Observer Day," it announced. "I will accompany your vessel to Concord space and document your contribution." The pause before the final word carried unmistakable derision. Captain Han maintained her composure. "We welcome your expertise, observer. Your quarters have been prepared according to Concord biological specifications." As the alien delegation toured the ship, Engineer Bayek noticed their subtle reactions. "They're scanning everything," she whispered to Security Chief Min, "and they seem surprised by the adaptive hull configuration." "Let them look," Min replied. "They've already underestimated us. That's our only advantage." That night, as Earth disappeared from view, Captain Han addressed her crew of 150, each selected from thousands of qualified applicants worldwide. They laughed. "When we announced one ship," she said, her voice carrying through the vessel's communication system. "Let them laugh. Every member of this crew represents the pinnacle of human capability. We carry not just weapons and technology, but human ingenuity, adaptability, and determination." She paused, looking at the faces before her. Scientists, soldiers, diplomats, each chosen for exceptional abilities and psychological resilience. "The galaxy may have laughed when we launched one ship," Han continued, "but they'll remember what happened when we arrived. We are humanity's ambassadors now, and we will earn our place among the stars." As the Defiant activated its main drive, Observer Day transmitted a message to the Concord leadership. "The human vessel is underway. Primitive but unusual design elements noted. Will continue observation of this curiosity." What the Observer didn't report was the strange feeling that had settled in its secondary brainstem. Something ancient ancestors might have recognized as unease. Something about these humans and their lone ship felt unpredictable. The Defiant accelerated toward the stars, carrying humanity's future with it. Behind them, Earth held its collective breath. Ahead lay a galaxy that had dismissed them as insignificant. Between those points traveled one ship, ready to change everything. Thanks for listening. The Defiant emerged from its final jump point with a shudder that rattled bulkheads and sent crew members grabbing for handrails. Captain Han steadied herself against her command chair as the view screen filled with the breathtaking vista of the Concord Defense Fleet. Hundreds, no, thousands of vessels arranged in geometric formations stretched across space, their hulls gleaming under the light of 3 distant suns. "By all the stars," whispered Communications Officer June, his eyes wide, "there are more ships here than humans have built in our entire history." Observer Day's mandibles clicked in what might have been satisfaction. "This is merely the 7th Battalion. The Concord maintains 12 such forces across our protected territories." The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed the scale of the galactic community they sought to join. Sleek attack vessels with crystalline hulls drifted alongside massive carrier ships that could engulf the Defiant 20 times over. Biomechanical cruisers with living components pulsed with eerie light, while automated defensive platforms moved with perfect precision. "Incoming transmission from the fleet commander," June announced, his fingers dancing across his console. The view screen shifted to show a broad-shouldered alien with metallic ridges instead of hair. "I am Admiral Tak of the 7th Battalion. Defiant, you are cleared to approach docking position 447. Prepare for inspection and combat assessment." "Combat assessment?" Lieutenant Min questioned after the transmission ended. Captain Han nodded. "We always knew this was coming. They need to evaluate what we bring to their defense force." Observer Day made a sound like grinding stones. "A formality. Your vessel's capabilities are already catalogued as Category 7, suitable for reconnaissance and evacuation duties only." Engineering Officer Kim looked up from her station. "They've classified us without even seeing what we can do." "The classification is generous," Day replied. "Many argued for Category 8, ceremonial escort only." The docking procedure took 3 hours as the Defiant navigated the complex protocols of the Concord fleet. When Captain Han and her senior officers finally stepped onto the deck of the command vessel, they found themselves surrounded by representatives of a dozen species, most watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to undisguised contempt. Tall avian being with shimmering feathers approached. "Welcome aboard the Resplendent Victory. I'm Commander J. I've been assigned as your mentor." The translator hesitated on the final word, suggesting a less flattering term had been substituted. "We appreciate the guidance," Han replied diplomatically. Commander J led them through corridors filled with technology beyond human understanding. Crew members from various species turned to stare at the humans, some even producing recording devices. "They're treating us like zoo exhibits," Security Chief Min muttered. "Patience," Han cautioned. "We're here to learn." Their tour ended at the tactical center, where a massive holographic display showed hundreds of simulated battle scenarios playing out simultaneously. "The fleet conducts regular combat exercises," Jay explained. "Tomorrow, your vessel will participate in rudimentary drills appropriate for your classification." A bulky reptilian officer nearby snorted. "Why bother? Their ship wouldn't last 5 minutes against a Scourge scout vessel." "Perhaps Commander Bin would prefer to demonstrate," Jay suggested, gesturing to the reptilian. Before Han could intervene, the challenge was set. The Defiant would face Commander Bin's cruiser, the inevitable conquest, in a simulated engagement the following day. Back aboard their ship, the senior staff gathered in the tactical room. "They've set us up to fail," Navigator Park said flatly. "The inevitable conquest is 3 times our size, with weapon systems centuries beyond ours." Han studied the holographic representation of their opponent. "Then we won't fight on their terms. Officer Kim, tell me about the adaptive systems." Kim's eyes lit up. "We've mapped their communication frequencies. Their tactical systems are predictive. They anticipate based on established combat doctrines, but our Jin catalyst drive doesn't follow any pattern they've encountered. And the hull reconfiguration system, ready for field testing. We can reshape our deflector geometry on the fly." The next day, ships across the fleet positioned themselves to observe the exercise. Betting pools formed among alien crews, with odds running 100 to 1 against the human vessel lasting more than 3 minutes. The Defiant hung in space, looking small and fragile compared to the inevitable conquest's heavily armored bulk. "Exercise commencing in 30 seconds, came the announcement. Captain Han settled into her chair. "All hands to battle stations. Kim, initiate adaptive protocols. Park, prepare jump sequence Theta 9. The countdown reached 0, and the inevitable. Conquest unleashed a barrage of energy weapons that would have vaporized the Defiant in actual combat. Instead of dodging, the human ship's hull plates suddenly shifted, creating an asymmetrical surface that diffracted the energy beams in multiple directions. "What is this?" Commander Bin's confused voice came over the comm channel. Before he could adjust, the Defiant executed a micro-jump, disappearing and reappearing behind the larger vessel. The human ship's relatively primitive weapons focused on a single point, on the cruiser's engine housing, a vulnerability Kim had spotted during yesterday's tour. The simulated battle continued for 20 minutes, with the Defiant constantly changing tactics. When Bin adjusted to defend against energy weapons, the humans switched to kinetic projectiles. When he protected his engines, they targeted sensor arrays. "This isn't how combat works," Bin finally shouted in frustration. "You're not following any established doctrine." "That's exactly the point," Kim replied over the open channel. "Humans evolved on a planet where threats constantly changed. We faced everything from predators to natural disasters to each other. We survived not by developing perfect defenses, but by adapting faster than the threats." The exercise ended with the simulation declaring mutual combat ineffectiveness, an unprecedented draw that left the observing fleet in stunned silence. Admiral Tyke summoned the human officers immediately afterward. "Explain your approach," he demanded. "We call it tactical flexibility," Han stated. "Our technology may be less advanced, but we design systems that can reconfigure based on battlefield conditions rather than optimizing for specific threats." The Admiral's expression remained unreadable. "Your single vessel would still fall against a coordinated attack." "Perhaps," Han acknowledged, "but our purpose here isn't just to contribute one ship. It's to share a different way of thinking." Before the Admiral could respond, alarm klaxons blared across the command center. A communications officer rushed forward, features contorted with urgency. "Admiral, multiple distress signals from the Helion colony. They report unknown vessels attacking in overwhelming numbers." The atmosphere shifted instantly from academic debate to grim professionalism. Admiral Tyke turned to his staff. "Prepare the Rapid Response Division for immediate deployment." After a moment's hesitation, He turned to Captain Han. Your ship's adaptability might prove useful. Are you prepared to move beyond exercises? Han exchanged glances with her crew, seeing determination in their eyes. The Defiant stands ready to assist. As they raced back to their ship, Engineer Kim fell into... She stepped beside Han. They're still underestimating us, she said quietly. Han nodded. Good. Underestimation is just another advantage we'll use. The Defiant's engines powered up, joining dozens of Concorde vessels preparing for emergency jump. The mockery had faded, replaced by a new emotion the humans recognized in alien eyes, despite physiological differences: worry. Thanks for listening. The jump from Concorde space to the Helion colony took 3 hours, 3 hours of tense preparation as the crew of the Defiant readied for their first real combat mission. Captain Han studied the tactical briefings transmitted from Admiral Tyke's command vessel, her face growing grimmer with each new detail. What are we facing, Captain? Asked Security Chief Min, checking the charge on his sidearm for the third time. Han expanded the holographic display so the entire bridge crew could see. They're called Void Reavers, biomechanical swarm entities that operate with hive mind coordination. They consume resources, all resources, including living beings, to replicate. The display showed writhing masses of segmented insectoid creatures, pouring from ships that resembled twisted black thorns. Some reavers were small enough to infiltrate ventilation systems, while others towered 3 meters high, with limbs ending in organic cutting tools that sliced through metal plating. And the colonists, Navigator Park asked quietly. Helion houses 80,000 civilians, Han replied. Mostly researchers and their families. Their planetary defenses were designed for meteorite protection, not military action. Lieutenant June looked up from his communications console. The colony's distress signals are growing weaker. Their main transmitter must be damaged. 10 minutes to exit point, announced Park. Emergency coordinates locked in. The Defiant was among the smallest vessels in the emergency response fleet. 23 Concorde warships of various designs formed a battle group around Admiral Take's flagship. As they prepared to drop out of FTL travel, Commander Jay's face appeared on the communication screen. Defiant, your vessel has been assigned to evacuation support. Maintain position at the rear of the formation. This enemy is beyond your capabilities. Captain Han acknowledged the order, but once the transmission ended, she turned to her crew. Tactical assessment? Engineer Kim studied the incoming sensor data. The Concorde battle plan is conventional. Standard formation, coordinated fire patterns. The problem is the Reavers don't behave like conventional enemies. The view screens flickered as the Defiant dropped out of FTL and immediately plunged into chaos. The Helion colony was a massive installation of interconnected domes on a rocky planetoid. At least a dozen of the crystalline structures had already shattered, their contents exposed to vacuum. Around the colony, Concorde vessels engaged with swarms of smaller Reaver craft, while 3 massive thorn-shaped motherships disgorged endless waves of attackers. This isn't a raid, breathed Han. It's a full-scale invasion. The Concorde battle group moved into textbook formation, establishing firing lines and defensive screens. For a moment, it seemed the superior technology would prevail as coordinated energy beams lanced through clusters of Reaver vessels. Then the pattern changed. The Reavers, previously attacking in predictable waves, suddenly scattered in all directions. Some crashed deliberately into Concorde shields, overloading them through sheer kinetic force. Others clustered around weapon emplacements, sacrificing themselves to block targeting sensors. They're adapting, said June in disbelief, learning from each exchange. On the command channel, Admiral Tyke barked orders as his carefully organized battle plan disintegrated. 3 Concorde vessels were already crippled, their gleaming hulls blackened by Reaver boarding parties that cut through external defenses. We need to assist the evacuation, Captain Han decided. Park, take us in closer to the colony. Min, prepare security teams for possible boarding defense. The Defiant accelerated toward the colony, weaving between larger ships locked in desperate combat. As they approached the main evacuation point, a docking ring still miraculously intact, They saw hundreds of colonists frantically trying to board the few escape vessels that remained. "Incoming!" shouted Park as sensors screamed warnings. Swarm of Reaver interceptors broke from the main battle, sensing easier prey in the human vessel. Dozens of the jagged asymmetrical craft streaked toward the defiant organic weapons pulsing. "Evasive pattern Delta," ordered Han. "Kim, reconfigure shields for dispersed impact." The Defiant banked sharply, its hull plates shifting to present. Minimum surface area to the attackers. Energy blasts splashed against the human vessel's shields, which flickered but held as Kim rerouted power faster than the automated systems of more advanced ships could manage. "They're cutting us off from the evacuation point," Park reported tensely, "trying to isolate us." Through the view screen, they watched in horror as a Reaver mother ship positioned itself between the colony and the main Concord forces. Its massive form extruded long spear-like appendages that began systematically piercing the remaining colony domes. "Admiral Tyke is ordering a strategic withdrawal," June announced, his voice hollow. "Says the colony is lost." Silence fell over. The bridge. Han stared at the tactical display, watching as conquered vessels began disengaging, focusing now on protecting themselves rather than the colonists. "No," she said finally. "Lieutenant Park, how close are we to completion on the gravitational manipulator?" Park's eyes widened. "The prototype. It's had exactly 0 field tests, Captain. Dr. Jin calculated a 60% chance it would collapse our drive core if activated. And what are the colonists' chances if we retreat?" Park swallowed hard. "0, Captain." "Plot an approach vector through that gap in the Reaver formation," Han ordered, pointing to a narrow opening. "Kim, divert all non-essential power to the manipulator systems. We're going to create an evacuation corridor." The engineer hesitated only a second before her fingers flew across her console. Manipulator powering up, core temperature rising. But within tolerances. The Defiant accelerated, diving toward the heart of the Reaver swarm. On the command channel, Commander J's voice crackled with static and disbelief. "Defiant? What are you doing? Return to formation immediately," Han ignored the transmission. "All hands, brace for gravitational distortion. Park, on my mark." The human vessel slipped between 2 Reaver clusters, taking hits that left scorch marks along its reconfiguring hull. As they approached the largest concentration of enemy ships blockading the escape route, Han took a deep breath. "Now," Park activated the Jin Catalyst's experimental subsystem. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to ripple around the Defiant. The gravitational manipulator didn't create explosive force like conventional weapons. Instead, it temporarily altered the fundamental forces in a targeted area of space. Reaver ships suddenly found themselves pulled toward each other by irresistible force. Dozens, then hundreds of the biomechanical craft collided, their organic components unable to adapt to the changing physics. The smaller vessels crumpled, while the massive mothership tilted as one side was drawn into the artificial gravity well. "Pathway. Clear?" shouted Min. "The colony's remaining transports are launching." On the view screen, desperate evacuation ships rushed through the gap created by the Defiant's action. The respite wouldn't last long. Already the Reavers were adjusting, their hive mind calculating new attack vectors. "Manipulator at critical levels," warned Kim. "We need to shut it down or risk core breach." 5 more seconds, Han insisted, watching the last civilian vessels struggle to escape. The bridge lighting flickered, and alarms wailed as the experimental system pushed beyond its design limits. Just as the final transport cleared the danger zone, a massive energy surge ripped through the Defiant systems. "Manipulator offline. Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Han gripped her chair as the ship lurched. "Get us out of here, maximum sustainable speed." The damaged human vessel limped away from the colony, systems failing across all decks. Behind them, the remaining Concord ships provided covering fire, shocked by the human vessel's sacrifice play. Hours later, aboard the Concord medical frigate, Captain Han watched as her injured crew received treatment alongside rescued colonists. The Defiant had survived, barely, with over 60% of its systems damaged beyond immediate repair. Commander J approached, his avian features unreadable. "Your actions were unexpected, but effective," came another voice. Admiral Tyke had entered the medical bay, accompanied by several Concord scientists. "Our analysts are still studying the sensor readings of your gravitational weapon." "Not a weapon," Han corrected. "A tool, one that can be adapted for multiple purposes." The Admiral studied her. "Your engineer Kim has already submitted 12 potential applications for Concord vessels. Our scientists are eager to collaborate." Han noticed something she hadn't seen before in the alien's posture. Respect. "Perhaps," Admiral Tyke said carefully, "there is more to learn from humans than we anticipated. Thanks for listening." The repair dock stretched across the viewport like a gleaming metal spiderweb, robotic arms and maintenance drones swarming over the damaged hull of the Defiant. Captain Han watched from the observation deck of Concord Station 12, her reflection in the glass showing new lines of exhaustion etched into her face. 76% of our systems require complete replacement, Engineer Kim reported, scrolling through damage assessments on her tablet. "The gravitational manipulator burned out its containment housing entirely. We're looking at 3 weeks minimum before we're spaceworthy," Han nodded. "And the crew?" "Medical reports 9 still in treatment. Everyone else is cleared for light duty." Kim hesitated before adding, "The station engineers have been unusually helpful. They've provided access to technical specifications we couldn't have dreamed of seeing before." "Success changes perspectives," Han replied. "Saving 8,000 colonists tends to do that." Since their return from Helion, the human crew had noticed a distinct shift in how Concord personnel treated them. The open mockery had vanished, replaced by curious glances and technical questions about the Defiant's systems. 3 different species had requested formal technology exchange briefings. "Captain," Lieutenant June's voice came through her comm badge, "could you come to Communications Lab 4? There's something you need to see." Han found her communications specialist, hunched over an array of equipment she didn't recognize. Beside him sat communications specialist Sung, her usual calm demeanor replaced by tight-lipped tension. "What have you found?" Han asked, closing the door behind her. Sung gestured to the display. "While the technical teams were repairing our communication systems, I noticed unusual encryption patterns in the subspace traffic. The Concorde is running 2 separate communication networks, the standard one we've been using, and another with military-grade encryption." "That's not surprising for any military organization," Han noted. "No," June agreed, "but what's strange is that I recognized fragments of the encryption algorithm. It's based on mathematical patterns similar to what we use to analyze Reaver communication." Han's eyes narrowed. "You're saying they've studied the Reavers extensively?" "Enough to adapt their communication patterns," Sung confirmed. "That suggests long-term observation, not a new threat. Show me what you've decoded." Sung activated a holographic display showing fragments of messages, duty rosters, and tactical assessments. "Most of it is still scrambled, but we've managed to piece together references dating back nearly 30 years. They've been tracking Reaver movements across 3 sectors since before we achieved faster-than-light travel." "They knew," Han whispered. "They knew, and they didn't warn the Helion colony." A soft chime at the door interrupted them. Han quickly deactivated the display before calling, "Enter." Observer Day stepped into the room, his insectoid features unreadable. "Captain Han, the Concord High Command requests your presence at a briefing in 1 hour." "Thank you, Observer. I'll be there." After Day departed, Han turned back to her communications officers. "Keep working on this, but maintain absolute secrecy. Share findings only with senior staff." The Concord Command Center hummed with activity as species from across the Alliance-coordinated defense strategies. Admiral Tyke stood at the center of a massive holographic display showing the movements of Reaver vessels across multiple star systems. "The situation has escalated," he announced, as the human delegation entered. 3 more colonies have reported contact with Reaver scout vessels. We're deploying defensive fleets to each location." Captain Han studied the display, noting the pattern of incursions. "They're probing your defenses, testing response times and tactical approaches. Several alien commanders turned to look at her, surprised by her assessment. Admiral Tyke nodded. Slowly. Precisely our analysis as well, which is why we've called this meeting. He gestured to a tall, robed figure who had remained in the shadows. High Counselor Ahn will explain. The robed alien stepped forward, lowering his hood to reveal features that seemed to shift and change as Han watched. A species she hadn't encountered before. What I am about to share is classified at the highest levels, Counselor Ahn began, his voice resonating oddly in the chamber. The Concord has monitored the Reaver Collective for over 3 decades. They are not, as you have been told, simply aggressive scavengers. They are bioengineered advanced scouts for something far greater and more terrible. The holographic display shifted to show a massive structure floating in deep space, a construct that appeared partly organic, partly mechanical, and entirely alien. Its surface writhed with constant movement, sections reforming and reconfiguring as they watched. We call it the amalgam, Ahn continued. A hive intelligence that has consumed 12 galaxies in the known universe. It sends Reaver scouts ahead to assess defensive capabilities and biological diversity, then follows to absorb all it deems useful. Han felt cold dread settling in her stomach. How long have you known it was coming here? Ahn's shifting features seemed to hesitate. We detected its approach vector 22 years ago. Before you contacted Earth, Han stated flatly. This isn't about allowing humanity to join the Concord. This is about using us as a weapon. The silence that followed confirmed her accusation. You must understand, Admiral Tyke finally said. The amalgam adapts to every conventional tactic. It absorbs technology and turns it against us. Our most advanced species developed perfect logical battle strategies and watched as the amalgam learned and countered each one within hours. Then you encountered humans, Han concluded. Unpredictable, illogical, constantly changing our approach. Counselor Ahn nodded. Your gravitational manipulator technology was impressive, but what truly caught our attention was how you implement it. No Concord species would have attempted your maneuver at Helion. The risk calculations would have forbidden it. You let those colonists die as a test, Han said, anger rising in her voice, to see how we would respond. To see if you could succeed where we have repeatedly failed, Ahn corrected. The colony was already lost. We've seen this pattern dozens of times, but you created a possibility where our analysis saw none, Hani. Turned to leave, disgust evident in every movement, but Ahn's next words stopped her. The amalgam's main consciousness will reach Concord space within 6 months. 12 trillion sentient beings across 47 species face extinction. Yes, we brought humanity into this fight through deception, but now I'm asking openly, will you help us find a solution our logical minds cannot conceive? Han turned, back slowly, meeting the alien's shifting gaze. Show me everything you know about this thing. All your data, all your failed strategies, no more secrets. Later, in her temporary quarters aboard the station, Han briefed her senior staff on what she'd learned. They used us, Security Chief Min said bitterly, threw us into combat to see what would happen. Yes, Han agreed, but they're also desperate. The amalgam doesn't just destroy, it absorbs and repurposes. Every world it takes makes it stronger and more adaptive. Engineer Kim studied the technical data they'd been provided. This entity can reconfigure its biological and technological components in real time. It's like fighting an enemy that evolves. During the battle, exactly why they wanted humans, Navigator Park observed. Our entire history is adapting to changing threats. We've never had the luxury of perfect defenses. Han looked around at her crew. I've informed Earth about the situation. They're accelerating production on 3 more vessels with Jin catalyst drives, but they won't be ready in time. We're what humanity has to offer right now. So what do we do? Asked Lieutenant June. Han's expression hardened with determination. What humans have always done when facing a superior force. We find the weakness no one else noticed. We adapt faster than our enemy expects, and we hit that weakness with everything we've got. She activated a tactical display showing the Defiant's upgraded systems, already incorporating Concord technology. The galaxy laughed when we sent 1 ship, she said quietly. Now that 1 ship might be their last hope. Thanks for listening. The Massive view screen on the Defiance bridge displayed the approaching nightmare, a writhing mass of organic and mechanical components stretching across space like a living storm. The amalgam had arrived, its vast consciousness housed in a structure that defied conventional classification. Not quite a ship, not quite a living entity, it pulsed with malevolent purpose as it absorbed the debris of Concorde vessels that had already fallen. 17 minutes until it reaches the defensive line, announced Navigator Park, his voice steady despite the terror visible in his eyes. Around the Defiant, the remnants of the Concorde fleet held position. From 12,000 vessels at the start of the conflict 3 months ago, barely 4,000 remained. Each defeat had made the amalgam stronger, as it consumed technology and biological matter alike, incorporating everything useful into its ever-evolving form. Captain Hahn studied the tactical display where red markers representing Reaver scout ships danced around the main amalgam mass. "Status report on the Coalition vessels?" "All vessels report ready," replied Lieutenant June. "Task Force Phoenix is in position. Task Force Hydra stands by for Phase 2. Hahn nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over her. After months of desperate planning, adaptation, and lightning raids, it had come to this, a final stand at the edge of conquered space. The door to the bridge slid open, and Admiral Tyke entered. The once proud alien commander looked haggard, his metallic skin dulled from exhaustion. "The High Council has evacuated to the Sanctuary Worlds," he reported. "Most believed this position would fall within hours. And yet you stayed," Hahn noted. "Someone must bear witness," Tyke replied simply. "Even to the end." Hahn activated the fleet-wide communication channel. "All vessels, this is Captain Hahn of the UES Defiant. In moments, we face the enemy that has consumed 12 galaxies before ours. The amalgam believes itself invincible because it adapts to patterns. Today we become the chaos it cannot predict." Across the fleet, nearly 800 captains from 47 species listened. Many commanded ships far more advanced than the Defiant, yet all had voluntarily placed themselves under human tactical command, a historical first in Concorde history. "Remember your assigned protocols," Hahn continued. "No vessel follows the same approach twice. No group maintains formation longer than 70 seconds. Strike, withdraw, reconfigure, strike again. Humanity stands with you today. Together, we will write the impossible." As she ended the transmission, Engineer Kim approached with a small data crystal. "The final upload is ready. All Coalition vessels have received the tactical randomization protocols." Hahn took the crystal, turning it over in her fingers. 3 months ago, they laughed at our primitive technology. Now their best engineers have integrated our adaptation algorithms into their combat systems. "It won't be enough on its own," Kim said quietly. "The amalgam will still eventually identify the patterns." "I know," Hahn replied, sliding the crystal into a secure pocket. "That's why we have the second plan." The amalgam struck with overwhelming force. Thousands of Reaver vessels swarmed forward, like a tidal wave of teeth and claws, followed by larger constructs that had once been captured Concorde ships, now twisted into nightmarish new forms. But instead of the unified defense the amalgam had encountered in previous galaxies, it met madness. The Coalition fleet exploded into hundreds of seemingly random formations. Vessels accelerated to attack, then broke off without apparent reason. Weapon configurations changed mid-battle. Ships equipped with the Jinn catalyst drive performed impossible micro-jumps, appearing where sensors predicted no logical advantage. On the Defiance bridge, controlled chaos reigned as Hahn coordinated the human approach to warfare. "Task Force Phoenix, execute pattern shift now. Task Force Hydra, begin convergence maneuver." For 2 hours, the battle raged across a vast expanse of space. The amalgam, for the first time in its ancient existence, found itself unable to establish dominance through adaptation. Each time it adjusted to counter one approach, the Coalition forces had already shifted to something new. "It's working," breathed Security Chief Min as the tactical display showed the amalgam's advance slowing. "They can't predict us. For now," Hahn cautioned. "But look here and here." She pointed to sections of the display where Reaver vessels were beginning to mimic the Coalition's randomized movements. "It's starting to incorporate our unpredictability. We have perhaps 30 minutes before it adapts completely." Admiral Take studied the display. Then your secondary plan? Han nodded, grimly. Navigator Park. Prepare jump coordinates to target Point Alpha. Engineer Kim prime the modified gravitational manipulator. After the battle at Helion Colony, Kim had worked with engineers from 12 species to transform the experimental device into something new, a system capable of creating localized distortions in space-time itself. There's a significant chance this will destroy the Defiant, Kim warned. The calculations show 94% probability, Han agreed. But if we succeed, the payoff is worth the risk. She turned to face her crew. Anyone who wishes to transfer to another vessel may do so now. Not a single crew member moved. Han smiled faintly. Task Force Phoenix, move to Phase 3. Create the opening we need. Across the battlefield, hundreds of coalition vessels suddenly executed a synchronized maneuver, concentrating fire on a single point in the amalgam's massive structure. The combined assault tore a temporary gap in the entity's defenses. Now, ordered Han. The Defiant leapt forward, engines straining as it accelerated toward the breach. Reaver vessels swarmed to intercept, but coalition ships threw themselves into suicide runs to clear a path, breach closing in 15 seconds. We'll make it, Han said with quiet certainty. The human vessel slipped through the gap moments before it sealed, finding itself inside the amalgam's structure, surrounded by twisting corridors of biomechanical tissue that pulsed with eerie light. Sensors detecting the central node, reported Park, 2 kilometers ahead. All power to engines and shields, ordered Han. Get us as close as possible. The Defiant drove deeper into the heart of the enemy, its hull screaming under the assault. As the amalgam's internal defenses awakened to the threat, corrosive fluid sprayed across their shields, while mechanical appendages lashed out, searching for purchase. Shields failing, hull integrity at 47%, keep going. The view screen showed their target, a pulsating chamber where countless strands of energy and matter converged. The amalgam's central consciousness, the node that coordinated its vast hive mind. In range, Kim announced, her fingers dancing across her console as she activated the modified gravitational manipulator. Initiating space-time distortion in 3, 2, 1. The device powered up with a sound like reality itself tearing apart. From the Defiant's bow, a beam of twisted space-time lanced forward, striking the central node. Unlike conventional weapons, it didn't destroy through force or energy. Instead, it created a localized pocket where physical laws themselves became inconsistent and contradictory. The effect on the hive mind was catastrophic. The amalgam had evolved to adapt to any weapon, any strategy, but it could not adapt to regions where the fundamental rules of existence fluctuated randomly from moment to moment. "It's working," shouted Kim over the howl of failing systems. "The node is destabilizing." On the bridge, panels exploded as power surges ripped through the ship. Emergency lighting cast everything in blood-red shadows as Han gripped her command chair. "Full reverse, get us out of here." The Defiant's engines strained as it turned, accelerating away from the collapsing node. Behind them, the amalgam structure began to convulse as cascading failures spread throughout its consciousness. Hull. Breach on decks 3 through 7. Life support failing. Keep going. Through determination and sheer luck, the battered human vessel burst from the amalgam's disintegrating form, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from a dozen wounds in its hull. Around them, the massive entity that had consumed 12 galaxies shuddered and began to break apart, its countless components suddenly deprived of the central intelligence that bound them together. 6 months later, Captain Han stood before the newly reformed Concord Council. The chamber, rebuilt after the devastation of the war, now featured the flags of 48 member species, Earth's blue and white prominently displayed among them. "The reconstruction of the defensive fleet proceeds ahead of schedule," she reported to the assembled delegates. "The Defiant's sister ships have completed their trials and stand ready to serve alongside our allies." High Counselor Ahn, his features still shifting but now with an almost reverential quality, when addressing the human captain, leaned forward. "And the proposed restructuring of our tactical doctrine?" "Underway," Han confirmed. We're implementing training protocols that emphasize adaptability over optimization. Every Concorde vessel now incorporates elements of human tactical systems, while benefiting from the advanced technology of all member species. "Here true exchange," observed Admiral Tyke with satisfaction. "Not the one-sided arrangement we originally envisioned." When the formal session ended, Han walked through the gleaming corridors of the new Concorde headquarters. Engineers Kim and Park waited by the observation deck, watching shuttles ferry personnel between the station and the rebuilt Defiant. "They've approved the design modifications for the next generation of exploration vessels," Kim said, unable to hide her excitement. "Every ship will carry a Jin catalyst drive and adaptive systems. And more importantly," added Park, "mixed species crews, no more segregated command structures." Han gazed out at the stars, the same stars that had once seemed so distant from Earth, now part of humanity's shared responsibility. "The galaxy laughed when we sent one ship," she said softly. "Now they're building hundreds more just like it." "Not quite like it," Kim corrected with a smile. "The Defiant was one of a kind." "As was its crew," came Admiral Tyke's voice as he joined them at the viewport. "The Concorde existed for 8,000 years before humanity arrived. We achieved technological perfection, eliminated conflict among our species, mastered the fundamental forces of the universe, and yet we nearly fell because we forgot how to adapt." He turned to face Han directly. "Your people taught us that strength lies not in perfection, but in the willingness to change, to take risks, to embrace chaos when necessary. That is why humanity now sits at the center of our alliance, not because you sent the most powerful ship, but because you sent exactly what we needed most, a reminder of what it means to evolve." Thanks for listening.